Hi there, this is Dr. Everybody with Project 5. This project actually has a lot of similarity to Lab 5. In Lab 5, we had a file, and the data was arranged in columns, and you extracted information out of those columns and then did something like found averages and stuff. So here we have something slightly different in that our file is organized with commas in between. And so now you have to find indices of commas and use those as opposed to slicing. And a lot of the world is in comma-separated value files, the CSVs, and that's because spreadsheets can save their information that way. So we'll do a lot of work with comma-separated value files. And for those of you who've gotten working with lists over the course of this week, the topic for this week. One thing that's nice to do is to split the file using split lines of the file using commas, and if you want to do that, that's also fine. Otherwise, you can use the string find to find the indices of commas and use that to extract the information that's in there. So let's take a look at the project itself. What we have is we have a file of information we got from the United Nations about the International Day of Happiness. We have this file called data.csv, and and so CSV is a comma-separated value file. And what we're going to do is we're going to read through that and just extract some information. Let's go down and actually look at how this might work. So we have this CSV file that we're working with, and we're going to prompt for the file name, and you type that in, and as with any project, leave the error checking for last, and we're going to give it one of two values. We're going to give it a 1 or a 2, and in this case we're providing an input of 1, which means we're going to be searching on country names. And within that, we're going to look for ones that have the word United in it, which is United States, United Kingdom, and United Arab Emirates out of our file. Notice that we entered a string that was lowercase. It could be lower or uppercase. Case shouldn't matter. And you can see that of course, United States is capitalized, so that picks that up. And then, much like what you did in the lab, we're going to collect the values of the countries that we have selected. We're going to collect those and calculate an average. We also have the ability to search on regions. And and so with that case, again, we're going to start with the data. That's the file that has everything in it. We're going to search with 2 for the region, and when we put West in, then we pick up things on the region that have West in them, which is Western Europe. And again, we're going to take all the happiness scores and find an average out of that. And so that's the basic idea. One run of the program is one look through the file. And then, once you have that working, you can think about having errors in there, and so you have to keep asking for information, and so on as we go through here. So if we take a look, we give you a we give you a skeleton to start with, and I suggest that you take a couple of shortcuts here to get started with. You know how to open a file, and this file is called data.csv, and I suggest you start like this. And handle all the error correcting later, so that we can actually get on with this project. And by the way, these passes are placeholders, and you want to delete those. You should never have any pass in your final code. So I can call my open file function, and we actually do the reading of the data inside this read data. So if it gets this file pointer, we can say for line in FP, and we can print the lines in the file. But I also have to call that function, so let's do that. Read data FP, and I'm going to give it the input strings of the first test, which is a 1 and united. Okay, so what I'm doing is I am grabbing out of test 1, here's test 1, where I'm always opening CSV. At this point, we're providing two inputs, the 1 and united. So those are going to be the two arguments to my function. And you know, this was the one that was called the input string. That's the argument to the function. And this one was called the search string. And so to start with, I'm going to have those two values hard-coded into my program as well as the file name, so I can run that particular test. And so you can see here my input string, I am starting out for right now hard coding it to be a 1. So we have a 1 for my input string and a united for my search string, and then I'm passing my file pointer that I got from here. So those are the three pieces that I have. And I go and have just these two lines of code here just to print out what's in my file, see what it looks like. Right? And my open file just opens this particular file because we're starting off without any error correction. We're going to have to add that later on. So what happens when I run this? Well, when I run it, it goes through the whole file, and you can see how each line of the file is organized. There is a country, in this case Burundi. Okay, that is in sub-Saharan Africa. And then there's a bunch of data where the first one is the happiness index that we're interested in. And so it's you know, the first item, the second item, the third item in each line. These lines look like they're two lines, are actually not. They just couldn't all fit on one line. So there's that. So we have the country, the region, and the next thing, which is actually here, which is the happiness data. And you have two ways of handling this. You can, you know, in terms of what the indices are, you can do a find of a comma, And that'll give you, and using that you can find indices of commas, or you can split on a comma. And then if you split, then you can use the indices. Oh, this is the first region, that's my country, and so on. So we got two different ways to do it. One is using split, which gives us a list, splitting on the commas, or we can find the index numbers with find, and either one of those will will get you those indices. So I started out by printing the line. Now what I want to do is I'm only interested in certain lines, and so you now need to say if, and you got to figure out some Boolean. And the first thing I did was I started printing some lines in there based upon my on the input string. All right, so the input string, in this case it's a 1. Okay, so let's go and print out the things that match up with United. So that's the basic idea of this. Let me point out a couple other things now that we've gotten to that point. Let's look at the functions themselves. So we have an open file function, and we keep looping until a file is successfully opened. You don't know how many times you're going to do that, so that will be a while loop. And then use the try except with a file not found error. So but remember, do this after you get the program working. As you saw before, I just did a simple open file, just opened it. And then, this is really the guts of the project here, where we actually select out and print the lines that that we have here. So, and we do that by calling this function display line, and that takes the country name, the region name, and the happiness score, and formats it nicely. And we give you the format statement to make that easier to match up with mirror. And the main function is driving this whole thing, asking for the input and putting the right arguments in, so this function, so you can make the function calls. Remember, get this working first, and then add your error checking to it. Hopefully that gives you a start.